It's that time of year again. Classes are starting and students are moving in. If you manage student housing, you know it comes with a unique set of challenges: high turnover, complicated roommate assignments, and rapid fire leasing cycle. But here's the critical question. Do you know what the line is between a standard campus policy and a fair housing violation? Hello, housing providers and property management professionals. Welcome to the Fair Housing Insiders. I'm your host, Michael Coughlin, and with my years of industry experience, I've seen just how complicated the student housing landscape can be. That's why I'm thrilled to have back with us Leslie Tucker, a respected fair housing attorney and national speaker. Leslie, thanks for joining us to tackle this specialized topic.
Yes, it's good to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me. Student housing is a big part of the industry, and it does require some specialized compliance knowledge.
Absolutely, and a growing part of the industry as well. And before we dive into our tips, if you rely on this kind of insight to keep your community safe and compliant, make sure you hit that subscribe button below and ring the notification bell. And if you'd like to listen when you drive, like I do, check out our new podcast channel wherever you get your podcasts from. We release new episodes every week to keep you and your team protected. Now, Leslie, let's start with the biggest misconception, the idea that because student housing operates a little differently, especially if it's university affiliated, it might somehow be exempt from the Fair Housing Act. What's the reality for housing professionals in this space?
Well, student housing falls under the same legal framework as every other housing provider in the country. Denial of housing, different terms or services, and harassment based on a protected class, whether that's race, religion, sex, disability, it's still a violation of the Fair Housing Act.
Yeah, and in my experience, the highest area of vulnerability for any property manager is disability, specifically reasonable accommodations. And we know that over 50% of all fair housing complaints filed annually involve disability. Does this risk get amplified in student housing?
It does, kind of because of two factors, I think. First, student communities often deal with a high volume of accommodation requests, particularly for emotional support animals, or ESAs. And secondly, there's, as we know, this compounding problem of fraudulent ESA verifications. And we see a lot of students trying to, bypass pet policies using these online letters.
So for the property manager or landlord, what's the compliance mandate here?
Housing providers can't deny an ESA based on some policy myth, like the fact that there might be a requirement to apply breed restrictions, or the belief that college housing in general is exempt from fair housing requirements. If a student presents proper, reliable documentation verifying that their disability exists and their need for an animal, you have to accommodate them through the reasonable accommodation process. And consistency is so important here. Even if you suspect that, a fraudulent letter is involved, you should still follow your verification policy and process the request appropriately. Immediate dismissal of a verification without doing your due diligence first, that should always be avoided. And if you're unsure how to process requests in general, or what to do if you suspect that a verification letter isn't reliable, make sure you ask someone for help, elevate the request in some way.
Always great advice, no matter what you're dealing with. So student housing often involves assigning roommates, which is obviously a rare feature in conventional multifamily rentals. What are the fair housing pitfalls in that process?
So roommate matching is an area that really needs extreme caution. When you're assigning students to units, your policies still have to be neutral, focused on legitimate business needs. You absolutely cannot use protected characteristics like race, national origin, sexual orientation as a factor in assignment, even if people specifically ask for it, right? Even if it's not the housing provider's idea, you absolutely cannot match people on that basis. That's just going to be a fast track to a discrimination claim.
All right. So the tip here is these assignments need to be based on neutral criteria only.
Right. Yeah. Roommate matching policies should focus on things like lease terms, smoking preference, general lifestyle questionnaires, not on asking about protected class related questions. So you need to ensure that you create, equitable, fair policies that comply with fair housing laws. One exception to this, generally just found in student housing, is being able to restrict roommate matching based on sex, despite the fact that it is a protected category. So that wouldn't necessarily be found in other types of housing, but certainly you are permitted to, restrict a certain room to, just female tenants that only want female roommates, as opposed to co-ed units, if that's someone's preference. Another issue that arises a lot in roommate situations is the addition of an emotional support animal in a unit with roommates who don't want to live with animals or who, may be allergic to animals. This can't be a reason to deny an emotional support animal, even if it conflicts with roommate preferences. So it's important in those situations that you are flexible with transfer options if the presence of an animal ends up being detrimental to one or more of the other roommates.
That makes sense. So we also need to talk about the fundamentals here: occupancy standards and rule enforcement. For property managers, balancing the unique dynamics of student life and potential parent interaction can be really tough. But you still need to apply rules consistently to all residents. For example, if you enforce your rules against excessive noise against one group of students, but ignore the same behavior in another group of students because they're from a different background, or maybe you just like them, that's discriminatory enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be. And that's a perfect segue for me to reiterate that compliance isn't just about the policy itself, it's about the application of the policy. In unique environments like student housing, where you're dealing with young residents, conflicting needs and lifestyles, and concerned parents, having really thorough training is your strongest defense against liability.
Yeah, that's sound advice. And for our listeners, the Fair Housing Institute has a comprehensive course dedicated entirely to this topic: fair housing for student housing. We cover roommate assignments, accommodations, and policies in depth. You can find a link to the course demo in the description below. Leslie, thank you so much for breaking down these critical points. The core takeaway for property managers and landlords is that student housing is not exempt from the Fair Housing Act, and key areas like accommodations and assignments require specialized fair housing expertise. Compliance is always going to be cheaper than litigation.
Yeah, glad to be here, Michael. Thanks.
Yeah, that's our message for today. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with your team, and check us out wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're looking for comprehensive training for your team, check the links in the description for resources for the Fair Housing Institute. Join us next time on the Fair Housing Insiders for more insights in keeping your properties, yourself, compliant. Happy training.